As we always kick off the show, I want everybody to take a moment and think about what Goldilocks reminds you of. To me, Goldilocks is all about balance because she didn't want anything too hot. She didn't want anything too cold, right? She didn't want anything too hard. She didn't want anything too soft. And to me, that epitomizes the balance we need to drive the kind of change and influence the change we want to see. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. It is so wonderful to be sharing another Saturday morning with you. And we welcome every one of you, whether you're participating through our Zoom event or you are participating through our Facebook Live. We are excited to have you here, and we truly look forward to your active engagement. We talk about Goldilocks from the perspective of the importance of balance. What comes to my mind when I think about Goldilocks and the purpose of the show is truly to help folks understand that the centeredness of Goldilocks is a good place to start all aspects of our decision making and come from a point of influence. Why is that? Research shows that when we are in the center of a particular issue spectrum, not too left, not too right, not too extreme on any end, we're able to influence to a greater degree. Because generally we can only influence 3 levels from where we are, whether we are all the way at the top, we influence 3 levels down, or we're all the way at the bottom and we influence 3 levels up. But when we're in the middle, we're able to influence 6 levels, 3 levels up, 3 levels down, and then obviously the level we're in. The more we influence, the better we are able to shape the change we need. And the more we shape the change we need, the more successful we can be in our endeavors and in living a purposeful life. As we start thinking about all our conversations in this show, how we engage with one another, how we show up for each other, let's keep in mind that importance of centeredness and focus our conversation on how do we make sure we get it right so that we, as we show up, have the best opportunity to give ourselves the chance to be who we are meant to be. Today's topic is going to be biases and microaggression and how to break the cycle. We are living in a day and age and time and space where everything is so polarized. I say white, somebody else says black. I stand on one side and say I see a 6. The person stands on the other side and says, no, it's a 9. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense to have that argument because both are right or both are wrong. It really doesn't matter. But what are we doing here? How do we get past all of this animosity, aggression, the negativity? And how do we get to a place where we're all moving forward, keeping in mind that none of us get anywhere on our own. We do need other people, and we take this journey called life alongside somebody else. We've been talking about why do we need to function with purpose? Why do we each need to understand our own purpose in life? And you have actively engaged in identifying what is it you love, what are you great at, and what the world needs, and how the intersection of all of that gives you purpose. And when you find your purpose, then you're also looking at your own emotional intelligence and how you show up for yourself, how you show up in the environment you are trying to fulfill your purpose, and how are the elements of emotional intelligence helping you get there. The final piece of the relationship management we need to talk about, and to help me talk about, is a wonderful guest, Raj Kumari. And why do we need to make sure when we talk about relationships, we talk about biases? When we show up with our lenses of prejudice or our experience-based notions or wanting to put people in boxes, we are truly shortchanging ourselves, not only from our fulfillment of purpose, but also the greater good. and to help us have that conversation and think about how are our biases showing up as explicit bias, implicit bias, and how much of this is conscious, how much of this is unconscious, how are these manifesting as microaggressions. And our behavior ultimately is going to give us consequences, right? Every action, every choice we make has consequences to us. And in the way we show up in society is going to have consequences for other people too. I always remind myself, I do not want to burn down my house because I need to get rid of a mouse, right? How do we go about understanding ourselves, how we show up, and then how do we help other people show up the way we need to have them show up so that collectively we fulfill our human purpose as well? Without further ado, I would love to bring on my guest for the day, Rajkumari. Rajkumari is specialized in epigenetics, and she is a coach who helps businesses and executives focus and bring this element into the workplace. And I am super excited to bring Rajkumari on. Rajkumari, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody.
Wonderful to have you. As we kick off, I would love for you to take a moment and share with the group what is epigenetics and what got you interested in the field,
Yeah,
because that will be a wonderful place to start.
yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to say how inspired I am just listening to you talk, Shuri. I just want to sit here and be a listener. I feel so inspired already. Oh my gosh. And I'm learning so much in just these very short few minutes. Epigenetics. It's a newer science. It's about 30 or 40 years old. A couple of my favorite epigeneticists, Moshe Saif, and even though Rachel Yehuda isn't an actual epigeneticist, she's done some major breakthrough research, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Epigenetics is simply this: your environment, the stressors in your environment, actually impact how your genes express themselves. So this is a direct correlation to biases, without a doubt. And so when we kind of start to dive into the epigenetics, and we'll start with Rachel Yehuda's work. Rachel Yehuda is doctor of psychiatry, Mount Sinai. She's also director of trauma uh, in some other New York place. And her research was mind-blowing when I stumbled across it. It says that the children of Holocaust survivors actually exhibit similar symptoms of those who were in the concentration camps. Now just think about that for a moment. How's that possible, right? These children clearly came after, years later after the concentration camps ended. And so what she started to actually notice through her research is that we carry the traits, tragedies, and traumas in our cellular biology for over 200 years. Every single one of us. So take a breath and just kind of, scan the world. All 8 billion plus of us is walking around with at least 200 years of transgenerational trauma. What? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a newer research from Dr. Joy DeGruy and Resmaa Menakem that show different centuries. So Dr. Joy DeGruy talks that, says that we have it for 300 years. Resmaa Menakem says we have it for 490 years. I mean, I don't actually care. It's a long time. So the type of work that I do with senior leaders is when they're having a challenge, whether it's around communication or collaboration, not getting along with someone, there's a behavior that's kind of impeding their own success in some way or creating toxic culture in some way. I dive in. I dive into their epigenetics. I draw an epigenetic map. I start to actually sort through some transgenerational patterning, and then I start to connect dots for them. And then, I'm sure we'll get to this at some point in the talk, we start to rewire the parts of the brain that are housing those stressors
Mm-hmm.
and the nervous system that is ensuring that those stressors are in fact in place because it's thinking 3 centuries, 3 generations ago, I gotta watch out for that, even though that is no longer present, right? So that kind of in a very big, large nutshell is epigenetics.
I love the way you explain it, coming from South Asia, where elephants and ancestral memory is part of how creatures live, right? As cycles of ecology changes, elephants who are young know where their ancestors went for water. And in my part of the world, you don't build in the path of elephants because they will walk through residential areas to get to their source of water because they do have ancestral memory, right? So this conjures up in my mind that same capability in humans, right? And how do people then make sense of it? And how most people are not even aware of it, right? They don't even know what's triggering them. They don't know where all of this is showing up from. What are some of the steps people can take? And especially in a time and age where we live in a place most people don't even know where they came from.
For sure, for sure. That's a very big question, Kasturi. So I think let's just kind of rewind a little bit and go back to the elephant story that you shared. I think your example kind of really highlights and underscores how easily we are conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like elephants don't have a sit down in preschool with their babies and go, okay, folks, here's the map. Memorize this map because if you take a left at the chevron, you're not going to get where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't do that. So if they don't have to do that, if birds don't have to do their own strategy sessions
Mm-hmm.
migrating, right? Like if no
Yeah.
other species is doing these brainstorming sessions,
Yeah. Our coaching sessions are fixing sessions, right?
right, right. No deer after or gazelle goes to therapy after being chased and surviving. No, it's a conditioning, right? And the research shows literally 15 minutes after avoiding a near death situation, the gazelle's grazing again. So we've gone from complete panic, complete life threatening death potential situation
Mm-hmm.
to grazing. Oh, this is delicious. Look at this little patch right here. So how are they able to do that and we aren't? What's happening where we are just like, okay, I got a budget for 13,000 for therapy this year, right? So we have a prefrontal cortex. That is the first thing for sure, and we make meaning out of everything. And so the opportunity to answer your second question is what do we do with this, right? Because there can be incredible exhaustion and fatigue if I go, oh, I picked up my pencil with these 3 fingers at this time. What does that mean? Like that's not helpful. But what in your life isn't working to the degree in which you'd like? Are you not getting a promotion? Are you not being respected to the degree that you would like? Are you feeling frustrated around levels of intimacy in your personal relationships? Are you noticing that you're not really connecting or you feel excluded? Right? What are those pieces? That's the opportunity to do the work. And from there, as you sort through the things that you would like and notice that you're not getting them because of these things, now draw your own epigenetic map, see where the patterns may be, and then from there start to figure out how to shift them. And we'll talk about how to shift them as we continue this conversation. But I think that's the first step, is get really clear. So may I give an example of,
Please do. Please do.
yeah, and personally, right? So I started my second startup many moons ago now, and that was an epic failure. I was audited by the IRS. My one client became a competitor that stole my idea and went to another company. Yeah, I didn't make a dime. I spent 3 years, and I just struggled incredibly. And for me, the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, was getting audited by the IRS. That was horrifying. Though at the end, I did hug my auditor, and she said she had never had that happen before. So there you go. Epigenetically, this was much later, I drew my own map to see where the heck that could be. And if I go up 3 generations from me, so that's my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather, he experienced being colonized by the British and forced out of modern-day Bangladesh. So he was a wealthy landowner and was forced to leave all of that and change locations into now what we call India. That's not his home. So he lost everything and had to start from scratch. My grandfather, same thing. My grandfather actually lost all of his money to the Indian government. It's a long story, we're not going to get into that. My dad built a multi-million-dollar home when everything was selling for like, $1 billion. You could buy a pencil. You could sell a pencil for $1 billion. People would buy it in 2008, 2007. Couldn't do it. He had to foreclose, and the government took that. That's in honor of you. This is the epigenetic contract. I will follow that experience. In my own version, right? I'm not going to lose land. I didn't have any land. But I epically failed in my second startup. So just to kind of, have the interest and curiosity to self-reflect on where things aren't most optimal for you, and invite yourself to kind of dig in and look at the root cause of what that could possibly be. And you may never know, and that's okay. You can still rewire.
And that's a good point you make, because there are a subset of the section of the population that cannot trace their parents or their ancestry. And they still have a way of figuring out and how to go rewire themselves. And knowing that is important.
Yes. At the end of the day, we are all neurochemical pharmacies, right? And so it's really about, if we don't have the data, that's okay. Now what we're looking for is the anxiety. What we're looking for is the depression. What we're looking for is the stress, right? And then we can begin to rewire from that place and start to kind of sort through the places that bring us that anxiety, stress, and depression, and then substitute that out with different neurochemicals, and that's a rewiring in the right hemisphere. And that's what I do all day long.
And that is some wonderful context to move over to our social issues we're facing, right? It's not just an American social issue. We are seeing protests and marches and people polarized all over the world. It's almost like the zombies woke up and now everybody thinks everybody else is the enemy. And where is all this coming from? Obviously, we've talked through the history. And so if we all have ancestral history of somebody attacking us,
Yes.
and somebody else being the other, and somebody coming in and taking everything that is ours,
Yes.
or we going and taking somebody else's, and now we're afraid they're going to take back what we took from them, right? So all this, and we're also living in a country that is very young.
We are.
And how do we make sense of the biases and the aggression and everything that's going on around us that manifests in social life, in community life, in workplace, right? How do we make sense of this? And how can epigenetics help us kind of start thinking about it differently?
So these are, I'm truly enjoying this conversation. So thank you so much. So basically, we use epigenetics as a map to the degree that we can. If you were adopted, that's information. You are definitely carrying, if you've never met your parents, you are absolutely carrying the epigenetics of the people you've never met, without a doubt. I have worked with many adopted executives. You are also impacted by the environment within which you grew up, right? So if you had a very loving experience with your adopted parents, that definitely helps, for sure. So that's the epigenetic piece. That's the data gathering. That's the historical points, right? To the degree that we can have that, that's very helpful, right? And then we can go, oh, we can have these aha moments.
Mm-hmm.
When we have these aha moments, something very beautiful happens in the right hemisphere. There's a kind of a firing from the amygdala, the seat of the emotion, back to the right prefrontal cortex, and there's a calming of the nervous system. Oh, that's why. Oh, that's what happens. Okay, so this is the calming. But now we need to focus on our nervous system. So epigenetics again is the map, and now we need to come back to us, our body. The neurobiology of who we are. Because again, I say this facetiously, but it is also true, we are in fact walking pharmacies, period. And so we need to learn to become masters of how to self-regulate in all different ways. So to your question, Kasturi, we have two hemispheres.
Mm-hmm.
And the left hemisphere is about externally referencing. It's about measuring. It's about evaluating. It's about comparing. It's about seeing what's wrong so you can fix it, right? When we build companies, when we build product and services, this is essential. This is the human doing aspect of who we are. Absolutely essential. But if we only live here, this is the issue. If we only live in our left hemisphere, we start to see people as functional roles and not humans. Mm-hmm. We start to see them as objects, how they can hurt us, what they can do for us.
Because we are living in the space of doing.
Because exactly, the right hemisphere is the relationality aspect of who we are. This is all about relationships. It's about relationship to ourselves, to others, to the world. This is the human being aspect of who we are. Now, the little hiccup here, sadly, is that all of the unresolved trauma that we carry epigenetically for all these generations hang out where? Here! Oh no! So now, this could become a terrain that is terrifying. If I don't have the internal capacities, the internal resources to help myself through my own trauma, whether in this life or transgenerationally, I'm out of there. I'm going to hang out here. It's safer. Right? And then the kind of the bummer of this side is that it can only integrate new information through blame. And as we are blaming others, because again, it's functional, right? What can you do for me? What do I need from you? Now we're secreting dopamine. So, not only are we blaming, it feels really good to blame. Oh, well, you don't wear a mask, so, oh, well, you wear a mask, so it doesn't matter what it is. So, now to answer your last question, what the heck do we do? Mm-hmm. We have to figure out how to be okay to live here.
Mhm.
And that is why, A, you have to resolve your own transgenerational trauma within you. And two, something that lives here that is so important, we have 7 emotional and motivation circuits. Okay? This circuit here on the left, that circuit is called the seeking circuit. And it's like, we're gonna go get this, we're gonna get some fundraising, we're gonna build this product, it's gonna be awesome, let's go. That's what this does. It motivates us. Over here, we have a whole bunch of emotional circuits like fear, rage, playfulness. Our sexuality circuit is here. Um, but the most important one that I believe is true, to be the most important one, is the care circuit. When the care circuit is offline, now we really don't see other people suffering. We are unable to notice their well-being or lack of well-being because all we see is functional roles in people.
So
And
at that's the stage where you have empathetic blind spot, you are not kind, you're not compassionate, so you lose your ability to relate to human life itself.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I'm so glad you explained it that way. I just finished writing a book. I'm uh, releasing it on the 20th of October. And the book is titled Ennobled for Success. And the book talks about the importance of knowing who you are being
Yes.
so that everything you are doing is with purpose and it ennobles everybody you touch. And as we go through life and we allow our being to surface, then we are giving ourselves the opportunity to be ennobled by other people so that everything good in us can come out. And I
Exactly.
use my life history and my epigenetics of growing up in a war, the ancestral history, all of that to trace and tell the story of where were my aha moments and having those aha moments and getting in touch with my being. How did that help me become successful in what I was doing?
Beautiful.
And as you are explaining, I'm thinking you should write a review for my book
I would love to.
because I couldn't have explained what I'm saying any better than you just did, right?
Hmm.
And so if every one of us sit down and start mapping
Yeah.
our trauma, where we have been, and what are we sensing and feeling,
Hmm.
that is a good starting point, even if we don't know our full ancestral history.
For sure. And honestly, if you are someone who is feeling avoidant, that is a ton of data right there. I certainly was someone who fell into that camp, given all of my trauma, my personal trauma from this life. And I did not want to feel feelings. The only two feelings that I ever wanted to feel were rage and joking around, you know? And I had to do some significant work to rewire this care circuit.
And
So,
I can relate to that. I can relate to that growing up in the condition I was. The joking around and fooling around was the head faking so
yes.
that I personally didn't have to deal with the emotions I was going through. And the rage was my coping mechanism to be able to dump everything, right?
For sure.
And there are days I would go out and scream, or I have even put my fist through walls and then have to patch up the walls. That was too expensive and too time consuming, right?
Yeah.
And then physical activity and exercise and found a way to get rid of some of that anger and rage.
So it's not to get rid of that. We never want to get rid of our anger. We never want to get rid of our rage. Ever, 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 ever. This is really important.
Okay.
What we want is to have our care circuit come online so that we can feel that anger and it motivates and propels us forward versus heading into a violent tantrum, right? Putting our fist through walls. I have actually done that myself. It's 25 years ago. Um, when my care circuit was not fully rewired, not fully online, almost deactivated, because I was not shown kindness at all as a child, except for my grandparents, though I don't want to get into that, then it becomes too vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to show tenderness because we have grown up in an extreme experience of not feeling safe and not trusting others.
Mm-hmm.
So then when we express our anger, we express our rage, we don't have the ability to self-regulate. I remember being just a few years ago in a group, a tea group actually, a training group, and we were going around the circle and inviting people to kind of share what they were, and I was going through something in my life, and I said in exactly this voice, I said, well, I'm feeling incredible rage right now. Lots of stuff is coming up for me. And then I kind of went into the detail of what was going on. And someone who had also experienced incredible abuse in the group actually spoke after I spoke and said, I have never ever witnessed someone express rage in such a calm manner. Right? And that's when the care circuit is in partnership with. We also have a panic grief circuit, right? And have any of you Kasturi, have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yes.
Yes. There is a very pivotal moment in that movie, and I invite everyone to watch that movie. I invite you to watch it with me. I actually run the movie. It takes 3 hours to get through the whole darn thing because I sit there and pause it and explain the psychology of what's happening. So it's a lot. But there's a very pivotal moment when one character is feeling so numb and sad, but not expressing, just not reactive, shut down completely. And another character who has the very bubbly, joyful experience is like, come on, let's go, woo woo, we can do this. And that numb character is just like, ugh, no. And then another character who embodies sadness, these are about emotions, embodies sadness, touches the numb character. And all of a sudden, when we touch that sadness with our care circuit, now we have empathy. Now we can actually be there for someone. And that is such a pivotal moment, excuse me, in the movie. That it allows us to understand the full capacities of knowing that when we are partnered with our care circuit and we feel rage, we feel sadness, we feel panic or terror, we are fearful. That's how we self-regulate through the moment.
So as we start thinking about having that sense of care, being able to tap into that empathy, and showing up in a way that we can be gentle with ourselves and those around us,
Yeah.
how do we then help everything around us pivot to that space when all we are seeing and experiencing is everybody is mad at each other, everybody's carrying a gun, and everybody's ready to shoot each other? Because that is also our everyday reality.
Yeah. Imagine for a moment, and I'm so sorry, my throat.
Do you want to take a break and grab some water?
No, I'm gonna have some here, actually, thank you. Imagine for a moment, no, I'm serious. Imagine for a moment, every single person on this planet pauses and decides to actually rewire their care circuit. What would happen on this planet? What would happen? I'm asking honestly, what would happen?
There'll be less aggression.
Yeah, for sure.
There'll be more compassion.
For sure.
And we will have humanity. Human beings will have humanity.
We will notice. So what's really interesting about the left hemisphere and that functional piece is we don't actually notice ourselves. You see that in autistic kids, right? They'll knock down a knock over a cup of coffee and then they'll start screaming because they're like the coffee cup got knocked over and now it's spilled everywhere, or the milk. Or they don't have a sense of, depending upon where they are in the spectrum, they don't have a sense of their accountability. So in the seeking circuit, there's not a lot of accountability. If in fact there's probably nil, right? There's blame. Well, you didn't. No, but you didn't. Like this becomes this energy if we're only in the seeking circuit. And it's really interesting when we look at when we step into trauma and we start talking about trauma. The one who is oppressed, if we look at power dynamics for a moment, the one who is oppressed is literally surviving the moment. That is it. There's not a lot of compassion there either. There is a I better not die experience, right? And there's a am I safe now? What about now? What about now? I mean, there's a constant scanning. What about now? What about now? So there's that all that energy is caught up in the moment to survive the moment. So if one is experiencing being berated by their boss, they are not strategizing for 2021. They are surviving the moment.
Not even the day, just the moment.
Not even the day, just the moment. They're not thinking about their lunch that they planned yesterday, that they're so sad. They're like, oh my gosh, how do I survive this moment? For the oppressor, what is now happening, how that's showing up, trauma for the oppressor, how that is showing up is a refusal and an unwillingness to receive feedback. That's when gaslighting happens. No, that's not at all what happened. What are you talking about? No, I didn't do that. Well, you did for me. That's my reality. There's a really... Oh, sorry, please.
So it's truly a situation where the oppressor and the oppressed are in their little extreme spaces, fully triggered and fully doing, and nobody is being, and nobody is able to use the right side and be in the moment and give care and understand what's happening to the relationship.
Bingo.
And when society is polarized, 30% at this end, 30% at this end, and then 30% in the middle, wondering, how do I bring the whole piece together so that we can start healing, right? We have all three, and which is in the sweet spot of why we do this show about being in that center, using the left and right, and coming from that centeredness to see both sides and somehow negotiate and bring people to that healing point of reconciliation. How do we do that?
Oh, you're not gonna like what I gotta say.
With that.
So tune out now. Go watch your cartoons or go make your pancakes, because now is not the time if you're gonna get triggered. Oh boy, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question actually. Okay, well, in the sake of being authentic and transparent, I will just be honest.
Please do.
So I will start by telling the story because I think that will help lay the foundation first. So I identify as non-binary, as a gender expression, and so I don't really believe in gender personally. I mean, I have a biological body of a female, but I feel like there's so much constraint there. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous. I'm starting to fidget with my pencil over here, I'm noticing. So taking a breath, re-centering, self-regulating. And I spent most of my life actually being gay bashed. So I am queer, and that was very difficult, obviously. And so coming from a very traumatizing and traumatic childhood to then come out and realize that I am of this way of being in my life, and then to experience a decade, almost 2 decades of violence. whether it was mental abuse or physical abuse or emotional abuse, for being and expressing my gender. And so as I started to, this started with the second startup, I started to kind of do, and when that epic failure happened, I started to do some very significant reflection. Like, why did this startup fail? But that just led me down a path of me into all of this work, right? And throughout that process, I was still being gay bashed, for sure. In fact, the last time I can remember pretty severe is just crossing the street and being yelled at by a passing car. And it felt horrible to have that experience, but it also felt normal because I'd had it so much throughout my life, right? And then, I used to work for Facebook, so I worked for Facebook for a while, and then for about almost 2.5 years, and then I actually ended up quitting, and I started this whole coaching framework and this sort of exclusionary rewiring. And it was life-changing. It was life-changing to get this care circuit back online. Since I have activated my care circuit, not once have I been gay bashed. Not once. Not once. What does that tell you? It tells you that there is an opportunity that when we actually rewire parts of ourselves at a very basic, classic physics, we change our frequency. That's it. And to share another story, just last year, I was asked to give a keynote at Responsive Conference in Las Vegas at the Zappos headquarters. And I had just hired a designer to make my website, and she was kind of putting my branding together, and it was great. And so I'm in Vegas, and I realize I don't have the right clothing because of the lighting and the on stage. And so I'm like taking photos. I'm like, okay, what color shirt do I buy? What do I do? And she's like, calm down. Go get a white shirt. You don't have one, go buy one. So I walked into a luxury men's clothing store in Vegas, Caesar's Palace. 3 men, whoop, look at me. Because I had done the rewiring of the care circuit and had a new sense of self-regulated sense of self. I walked in, they look at me and I said, hello, I need a white shirt. I'm speaking tomorrow. Can you help me? I kid you not. They started scuttling around. What about this? What about this? They helped me try it on. They measure. I had it actually tailored. I bought a coat as well because that's what you do when you go shopping. You buy things you don't need. And then, how'd that happen? Was that a one-time deal? You could say that, but it wasn't. That rewiring of my trauma, of being victimized, not being good enough, of not deserving, of not being worthy, I don't get to have. I'm not allowed to have. It's not okay for me to be here, to be alive, to exist, to have love. All of those core beliefs. It took a long time for me to rewire that. But it completely changed the way I interact with the world. It has been mind-blowingly beautiful. So to answer your question, we have an opportunity to do some beautiful work with ourselves. It just comes back to the root statement of Gandhi. That's it. Maybe he didn't know about physics. I mean, he was a lawyer, but maybe he didn't know about physics, but it is just about that. When we move from an incoherent wave into a coherent wave, it is so basic. And that's this, and from the philosophies and the spiritual texts that talk about inner alignment. That's what it is.
Definitely.
That's it. That's
Definitely.
it.
You should have been in my class last week, teaching organizational behavior and change. And I have this military female student who just hates men because of her experience and she's so hung up on it, she thinks men are the enemy. And then it shows up in class.
Right.
And trying to help her navigate through that. And you bring up a good point. One of the things I need to help her do is take a step back and start thinking about how she rewires herself, so
Yes.
that when she shows up differently, men are not the enemy. I was trying to explain to her how I don't show up in a gender specific way at work because I'm a person, I'm a professional.
Right.
And I've had some wonderful men be there and mentor me and guide me. And I've been very successful because I was open enough to let other people step in and help me.
Right.
And so the conversation we were having is how some of us don't experience it. The others experience it to a great extent. And
Yes.
you just gave the key to the puzzle. So thank you.
Oh, great. What was it?
The puzzle is that how we are constantly reinforcing that negativity
Right.
and not shifting to that positive energy space. Because to quote Rumi's and favorite poet of mine, and he talks about how what we seek is seeking us.
For sure. And,
Yes.
and it's such basic physics. And it's, when we go into quantum physics, now that's the magic, right? Now
Yeah.
we get into some really incredible stuff that we can do. And that's when we forget that we're magicians. I think we've collectively forgotten that we're magicians. Because, technically we don't exist right now. And we do, right? So if we kind of drill down to the existence of my body, I could get down to quarks and gluons, right? And they're spinning rapidly, and I'm just a tornado of molecular existence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it. But I get to manifest. That's the beauty of being human.
Mm-hmm.
I get to be an alchemist. I just, if I'm stuck in my seeking circuit, if I'm stuck in my left hemisphere, I don't actually get to access the incredibleness of what is right in front of me. Right in front of me.
So the one last thing I want us to talk about, and then I want to open it up for questions because I can see everybody having a ton of questions here, is how do microaggressions and all of these unconscious things show up?
Mm-hmm.
How do we recognize them? And how do we remind people that it is causing negative energy in the environment? Because we don't always sit in a position where we can call out the people who are exhibiting microaggressions, right? If I'm constantly told that I speak good English and I let it get to me, it's going to be a problem. If I'm constantly told something about the way I look, the way I show up, and I allow it to get to me, then it's a problem. How can one break that cycle, and how can one actually address it? Is it all internal, or is there even a way to have somebody else take a look at themselves? Is there a way to hold a mirror to somebody else as much as I'm holding a mirror to myself?
For sure. For sure. Um, I don't think there's any amount of internal work that I could do to have men stop asking me if they could call me Raj. I don't, maybe there is,
Mhm.
right? Maybe there is. Um, but the gift there is for me to speak up. That's the gift. I have come from an incredibly cruel childhood where I was not allowed to express myself. And now, excuse me, now I get to actually use my voice in an assertive and boundaried manner. And it's incredibly powerful. Right? It's like, oh, and I get this all the time, even by email. A client who just hired me 2 weeks ago said, "Oh, instead of actual hug, since I live in New York, can I just call you Raj? It's close to a hug." And I said, "Actually, my full name is Raj Kumari, and Raj means a completely different thing, and I'm very proud of my name, so I would enjoy being called Raj Kumari." So, does it become exhausting? Yeah, it's annoying. Do I love going to Indian restaurants because I never have a problem with my name? Yes, of course. Do I have to contend with this every single week? I do. I also have to go to the bathroom every day. That takes up time in my day, right? It's really up to you. What is worth it to you? What's worth it to you? What are the lessons that you can learn, right?
Mhm.
What are your lessons? And I think we have to also, as an organization and as a leader of a team, we absolutely have to prioritize psychological safety. We have to teach our people what psychological safety is. In order to do psychological safety, we have to be psychologically safe. If we are not as psychologically safe as we would like, then we need to offer resources to learn how to rewire the right hemisphere to step into a greater sense of belonging. If we prioritize that, again, going back to imagine a world where everyone prioritized rewiring and activating their care circuit, where would we live? We would create even more amazing products, even more amazing services, even more amazing organizations.
Because we are free to innovate, we are psychologically safe to be creative. We're not continuously in a fight or flight mode, nonstop.
And probably a lot of the stuff that we would create now is not as much for profit, but for empathy and well being. And even though that might feel challenging to hear right now, I guarantee that when we are once there, it's going to feel insanely awesome. When you feel truly invincible because you are connected to yourself, you are accompanied by your own mental health and your own well being, you can accomplish anything. That imposter syndrome just dissolves. The level of love and connection that you're able to feel within you just allows you to inspire and influence those around you.
I love that advice. With that, I'm actually going to open this up. Feel free to jump in with your questions. Go ahead, Ariane. I saw you mute, so go ahead.
This one hit me hard. It hit home for me. With everything that I've been doing, everything that I've been coming to realize, the realizations that I've been having ever since I really started having all these conversations, this one has to be by far the one I needed the most. The
Mm.
reason why, and I made a couple of notes. So I'm currently working on it, but I did realize that growing up, I'm also adopted. So when you talked about adoption, that hit home for me. And I can relate to a lot of your story. You actually had me hypnotized. Like I was hypnotized. I absolutely love you. So yeah, I want to put that out there. Okay, so
Thank you.
because I was adopted, there were a lot of things that went on that I was so protected by my mom and my family. But because I had little friends and the little friends hear their parents talk, they always used to bully me about like not being loved. They're like not about not belonging in my family and about like my hair and about my collar and that I wasn't looking like them and I wasn't looking like they were Spanish. I don't look Spanish.
Mm.
And they would like tease me about being from Africa and stuff like that. And when I did find out about my adoption, what had happened is that I thought my whole world was over, my whole life was a lie. And I built this wall whereby now I wasn't a bully, but I built this foundation and this mask where nobody, absolutely nobody, could mess with me. But deep down, I was hurt. Deep down, I was just doing this to protect myself. And deep down, I was suffering so much. Like, I would be the happiest, bubbliest person. I apologize for the trucks. But deep down, I was crying myself to sleep. Like, I even considered suicide because I wanted to go home. I didn't want to be here anymore. So I was bullied. So I didn't become a bully, but I did build up this mask to like protect myself from all these people that hurt me so much. And also, there was another thing when it came to me, that I was always angry, because I was always in an angry environment, because that's the way the other people in my environment coped, with anger. So for every single situation, my first reaction would be anger, and I wouldn't be able to deal with it. Also, another thing is that I used to cry a lot. I wouldn't use my voice, but I used to cry. When I'm happy, I cry. When I'm angry, I cry. When I'm sad, I cry. So no one really knows what's wrong, because I couldn't talk. Like, my voice was gone. I could just cry for any and everything. I would just cry. And then the other thing was also my tough love. Like, I would be so mean to my friends, thinking that I'm being nice to them, because that's the only way I was taught to love, and not to, like, that sounds wrong, but because they were raised in this environment where, like, they weren't really there for them, or like my adoptive parents and everything, and all of that. That was kind of like, they did their best with me and to be there for me and provide all of that for me. But because to me, I perceived it as tough love, I felt like tough love was the way everybody else. So that's how I started loving people. And that's how I started expressing myself towards people. So it got to a point where all of these things were affecting me so bad. And it's now that I'm like really zeroing in on changing, on rewiring my brain, changing my story, saying thank you to all of the anger and all of, like, I was defensive as well. Like, everything, you couldn't tell me anything because I was right, and nothing anybody told me could work, because there was only one way. It was my way or the highway. And I've learned to humble myself from that and be like, you know what, that's not the only way. And I've also learned from Dr. Cass and all of the um, conversations we've had, that it's not only one perception. It's a million and one perceptions. It's one brain is one world, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. Also, the other thing I did want to put out there, I learned it this morning when I was journaling, and I was reading a book, something about you can heal, from Lewis Hayes or something like that. But everything comes down to being a thought. So a thought brings a feeling, right? So if you don't think the thought, then you don't bring the feeling. I just wanted to add to Dr. Cass's point about positivity, and yeah, that one right there. So that's what I wanted to add. I have to leave in a little bit because I have a workshop to do on forgiveness, so I'm excited about that. So I wanted to get in and get that in there.
Thank you so much, Ariane. Rajkumari, do you want to respond to her? Because you've really moved Ariane.
Oh, that's so sweet. I will just share this piece. The panic grief circuit in the brain, when the care circuit is not fully online, it's a direct path to loneliness and shame. So that's probably why you were crying. And so that's why it's so important to, if you haven't already seen the movie Inside Out, you love that movie. Yeah, I would invite you to just watch it again, especially that scene when Joy actually, for the first time, gets the value of sadness, right? Just go watch that again and let that sink in.
Can I watch it with you?
Do it. Maybe we'll do that. That would be great.
You are in LA, right, Rajkumari?
San Francisco, but yes, same
Okay.
time.
So Ariane is moving to California soon here. Yeah.
Come on, well, come after the fires.
You may actually end up having a movie date, and let's talk about this, and let's do a deep dive. So I'm glad I made this introduction. I want to hear about it when you actually do it.
Okay. I have to leave now, so I hope you guys have a blessed day. I love you all. Take care, and thank you for today. So much value.
Take care, Ariane.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, Kristen.
Hi.
I can see you have a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this also really impacted me. And now I want to ask you, what would you say, how do we start rewiring? Like, how do we get the care circuit online and how do we overcome the generational trauma?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to see if I can quickly. So I'm running a belonging boot camp for free October 10th. It's 6 weeks. It's only about rewiring the care circuit. In fact, one of my one of my people on my team said that should be our mission statement. Rewiring the care circuit. I was like, oh, that's actually a really smart idea. Can you see the chat window?
Yes.
Let me just make sure that that's the right link. Sending you to someone else's boot camp. So I think this opens up to the right boot camp. And yep, this is it. Great. So you can start there. You can come join us. Anyone is welcome to come. And then I also, you can go to my website. My website is rajkumarineogi.com. And the reason why I'm sending you my website is because there's an entire series, a podcast series called The ROI of EQ. So that will give you lots more information. I actually have a 7-hour conversation with this young lady, Sarah Payton. She's the author of Your Resonant Self. And I highly, highly, highly recommend this book for you to begin your journey. This is all about rewiring the care circuit as well. I hope to write a book also about rewiring the care circuit, but specifically in the workplace. So maybe that'll be a project that Kasturi and I do on the side. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. I would love to.
Yeah.
I'm getting messages from other people saying how much they're loving this. And Rajkumari, you truly are touching people. You are making a huge difference today. Thank you.
I needed to hear that. Thank you, everyone. It's been a rough week in California, waking up with red and orange skies. Just after watching the Netflix series Away, Going to Mars. So, thank you.
Hey, hi, this is Malvika. Just wanted to say a quick word. Hi, let me start the video. Hi. So I joined a bit late, but I was listening to Rajkumari, and I'm totally impressed. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. A couple points that really struck me is how you're advising and how you're recommending how we bring out empathy with the rewiring, and many things you said, the speaking up and all of that, it applies to pretty much all facets of our life. It has direct application to so many areas. And I'm very much waiting to see when you will have that movie with your reviews alongside, because I really think I would love to watch it with your input, because I want to make sure I don't miss out on those small nuances, which if I was to watch alone, I probably may not realize. So I would love to join you for that. And thank you so much for sharing all that you have shared. It's really awesome. Thanks.
I was going to thank you so much, and thank you for your kind words. And yes, who else wants to do the movie? Who else? Yay! Let's do
a movie screening.
Yeah, I think Amazon has Watch Party now, so gosh, let's do it. Let's do it. 3 hours.
Let's do it.
Psychoanalyzing a Pixar movie. That's fun.
There you go. Get your favorite bottle of wine, get a plate of appetizers.
Let's do it.
Wine and movie night.
Maybe what we can do differently is we can actually draw your epigenetic map while we do it, and then sort for the neurochemicals. I've never done that, so.
Oh my God, I've already signed up for the thing.
Yeah, me too.
Well, why don't I coordinate with Rajkumari and have something scheduled for a time that works for all of us?
That would be so lovely. Yes.
And I use movies when I teach, when I do coaching, even when I'm doing corporate training, because watching movies don't feel like homework. And once you start watching movies in this sense, We stop watching movies purely for entertainment's sake, and we start seeing the nuances of movies. It truly rewires the way we even approach entertainment. So I love that idea, Rajkumari.
Yes. And you know, given I will recommend one more movie, even though it's a bit odd of the movie to recommend. But I think, given where we are right now, and I know I have moments of hopelessness myself, and this week has been personally very challenging for me. I did go into hopelessness and like, is what I'm doing even helping at all, given what we're seeing, especially in this country right now in the United States? Is it called The Jedi Awakens, the last Jedi movie?
Mm-hmm.
The very, very last Star Wars movie, and I'm not a Star Wars fan at all, just be very clear. But what I found mind-blowing about the undertones, the under-messaging of that film, I've watched it thrice now, is literally the battle between light and dark.
Mm.
And I thought that was amazing. It was very hopeful. It was very, very hopeful. It's despairing to the very last second that it needs to be for the movie quality of the story, but then it shifts, and I think that is so. If you need a little extra inspiration, and even if you're not a Star Wars fan, and especially if you identify, you know, as a female or express as a female gender, it was very inspiring. It was really inspiring for me. So.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Gigi, do you have any questions?
She's off enjoying the blue sky.
No, I'm kind of breastfeeding the baby, so
Oh,
but I've like literally enjoyed this entire talk, and I kept on thinking like Alex is missing out. Like I really would have loved him to like listen to Raj Kamari because oh my goodness, it's crazy. I feel like he would really like appreciate all that she was saying. So I'll share the thing that she has coming up so that he could get a hold of that as well because I really and truly enjoyed this morning the entire talk.
hey, Gigi, Alex can actually watch the Facebook live feed too. So
I know. I think probably I'll just have him watch it like tonight since he's working right now. But I really wanted him to like. I kept on thinking about him this entire time.
beautiful. Thank you so much. So as we try to bring this to close, what nuggets of wisdom and guidance do you have, Raj Kumari, for folks here so that everybody continues their journey? This whole Saturday Conversations for us is to create a community that cares and shares and lifts each other up so that we truly are working together to rewire ourselves and help each other, right? So as we build this community, what advice do you have for each of us and the community so that we can truly be the change we need to see? We can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. And so what guidance and advice do you have for us as a group that we can start amplifying this?
So these are all great questions. I mean, the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is to breathe. And not from a meditational, philosophical place, but if you are a shallow breather by nature,
Mm-hmm.
that means that you are communicating danger to everyone around you. So when we are breathing diaphragmatically, slowly and deeply, our lungs secrete acetylcholine. And when our lungs, to the degree in which we exhale, the longer our exhale, the more acetylcholine, the more we're communicating safety to our brain. And as we know, when we're either on a Zoom call or in an office or a meeting with groups of people, we create hive minds. Like that, other brains just connect to other brains. That's just how it works. So if you need to deliver a message to your team that is least optimal in some way, and you walk into that meeting, whether it's on a Zoom call or not, and you're like, okay, so what we have to, like, this is an issue and we've got to deal with it. If you come in with that energy,
Mm-hmm.
people may seem that they're calm, but what is actually happening is stress levels are rising unbeknownst to you. We don't yet have that Terminator eye capacity of scanning for people's vitals built into ourselves yet. But if we did, that's what we would see. So, breathing is kind of a magical tool you can use, and done masterfully, it influences people. So start to practice that. I once dealt with a client who had to get their client to sign $1 billion contract. This was with a bank, and the person wasn't really on board with signing that. They were aggressive, they were hostile, they didn't agree, they were skeptical about the whatever, I don't remember. And it was on a phone, the meeting was on a phone of all things, so this was clearly back in the 50s. No. And I told my client, I said, even though you can't see the person, honestly try to connect with their breath and regulate it. He signed the contract. It works. I mean, I can give you so many stories of that. So breathing is really, really an interesting a tool that one can truly use. And if you are a shallow breather, it's probably because you have trauma.
I had one more question. I don't know if this is a thing, but does rewiring your brain and also doing the map, it's epigenetics, right? Yeah. Does any of that have to do, or can past life regression contribute to it?
Oh, everything can contribute to it, for sure. For sure. I just did a soul retrieval thing recently.
Really?
And I just had an amazing experience with that. But so everything can. It just depends on what you believe. You don't have to do that. You can do it you can do the same thing a different way. You can read a book and it can impact you, right? But really looking at all the parts of you. I think if you want to start working, this is for anyone out there right now in the audience, if you want to start really looking at who you are and what obstacles might be in your way that you may not even realize, I would just very quickly draw, you at the bottom of the page. Just draw, a circle or whatever. Typically, what I do is circles for women and triangles for men, and however they identify. I guess I haven't gotten that far in my life. But then I put parents. So for you, Ariane, it would actually be your biological parents. Okay, if you have information or not. If you don't have information, then do your non-biological parents, your adopted
I know
parents.
their names.
Okay, and then put your grandparents, right? And then all you have to do is just write down some sentences, even just words, of what the relationship was like for the child with the parent. So you as a young child growing up with your parent, with your dad, you as a young child growing up with mom, dad as a young child growing up with dad as a young child growing up with mom. So do that and just see what comes up for you. Just
Okay.
see. I mean, that alone, people are like, what? I never saw that before. Oh my God. Like that already happens, right? Just in that, the patternings that start to, even though they know the stories, they know that Aunt, Cecil, like, did this one thing, but then when they see it on paper, like, oh my God, I'm just like Aunt Cecil. Right? But if you come to the boot camp, we'll do a really deep dive into all of the epigenetic mapping.
I've signed up.
Okay.
I can also see this helping people with parenting, and breaking the cycle happens if we as parents,
Yes.
I don't have kids, but I always think of myself as a parent, right? I'm in some way, shape, or form impacting some young person's life. And if we understand it ourselves, then we can help. By breaking our cycle, we can actually be a better parent, a better teacher, a better mentor in somebody else's life.
100%. If you Google my name and 15.5, I just spoke at a conference on Tuesday. The conference name was called Empower. And I don't know if it's live yet. They've already sent it to me. But I spoke for an hour on the ROI of exclusion, the ROI of EQ. Wow, okay. And I go through and name the neurochemicals. So if you want to take this a step further for yourself this weekend, because you got nothing better to do because you're sheltering in place, watch that and then see if you can find, this is the most powerful piece, it's what I do with my clients, see if you can find the unmet needs for each of the relationships. Like, was there longing for dad or longing for mom, or was there like disconnection with dad or disconnection with mom? Was there mental health issues? Like, write all those things down and think, you'll have these aha moments like, oh, wow, there was depression everywhere in my family, or wow, there was alcoholism everywhere. Like, and then you can start to see the anger and the, right? So it just starts to make a little more sense.
I had one more quick question, Rajkumari. I've been trying to understand this, the topic of relationship ambivalence in a marriage. And I think there is a lot of application to what you're saying and there. So I know this is a longer discussion topic and we're probably out of time, but is there any books that you would recommend which kind of more describes your approach to this topic? Or even if there's any of your previous lectures or talks, you could direct me to.
So you're talking about attachment theory through epigenetics.
Yes.
Yeah. What an incredible question. My future book will have that, but I don't have a book out right now. I mean, you can certainly start here for sure.
Okay.
Definitely she has some amazing stuff. If you go to her website, and you can just Google this and it'll take you to her website. If you go to her website,
Okay.
she has webinars for sale for $20. They're amazing. I get so much of my information. They're all science-based. She's phenomenal.
Okay.
She's also a dear friend. And she definitely has, there's a webinar on ambivalent attachment. So
Okay.
for $20 you could learn a whole heck of a lot. And she also has it on disorganized attachment. I think when I watched that 90-minute webinar, I think I spent 6 hours sobbing on the floor because I saw so much of my own childhood stuff in that. So. But yeah, great. She's a great place to start.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I am so glad to see the impactful conversation that is taking place, Rajkumari. I can see that we need to have you back to continue this conversation at another time. But in the meantime, I am going to take a moment and bring this to closure so that we are truly able to take our lessons learned here and make sure that we are embodying this in our day-to-day life. We've learned so much today, and I know for a fact that our conversation is not going to end here. We're going to continue to have this conversation, right? Among ourselves, we have a network now, we have a go-to, we know the website, so please continue to build on this. This is not one and done. And Rajkumari, I cannot thank you enough for making time today and to help us have this conversation and have this conversation in such a meaningful way.
Thank you so
I
much.
don't think anybody else could have helped us have this conversation. So I want to tie every nugget of wisdom and insight Rajkumari has shared with us to our journey here. We are trying to find our purpose and live a purposeful life where we bring what we love, what we are great at, and what the world needs to make it work for us and make it work for the purpose we are striving for, and how opening up the care circuit is going to allow us to truly live our purposeful life in a meaningful way that we transform both ourselves and those around us. Keeping that in mind, we also know that everything we talked about today is helping us with how we show up for relationships, how we are building relationships with ourselves, like we talked last week, as well as with everybody else. And as we show up in that conscious framework with the sense of care, we start eating away and addressing our own biases, our own prejudices, and we start showing up in a way that it is positive, and we start attracting all of that positive energy so that our life becomes more fulfilled. And by showing up the way we do and by making our choices, we can truly make this contagious. And we have it in us to make it contagious. Next week, we are going to have a wonderful conversation about how we don't have to take life as if it's a set path and it's only that roadmap we have to take to get to a place. Life can be lived any way we choose for it to be for us. And we're going to take everything we've built up until today, including this wonderful insights about needing to rewire. And as we rewire ourselves, how do we take our journey maybe a little differently so that we shape our path and we don't let other people tell us how to get to our destination? So keep an open mind, come back, and cannot wait to have this wonderful conversation with you. Any questions, anything you need to get in touch with me or the guests, reach out to me. And as I always say in closing, every one of our human interactions is an opportunity for our transformation. I am so touched, Rajkumari, for your time, your energy, and your positivity to help us be transformed today. And I ask all of us to go out there and make sure every life you touch, make it a point to transform it in some positive way with your sense of care. And in that process, you will find that it is your life you're transforming. So thank you so very much. Stay blessed and take care. We'll see you next week and unleash your inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right.